All right, wonderful. So back into it. Once again, hi folks, I'm Anya Worley-Ziegmann with the People's Budget Coalition. Feel free to reach out after this if you have more questions, if there's more things that you want to know. So what we're going to chat about here today is we're going to give you a little bit of a briefing on how the budget works. So give you a little bit of a 101 on the budget. Then what we're going to chat about is what's going on in this budget this year. And lastly, we're going to talk about why this is important, why we're talking about this. If it's not already super clear by the time that we get to that point, we'll be giving you our plans as the People's Budget Coalition on what we expect to be into. So the mayor released his 2-year proposed budget on Friday, so just 2 days ago. And tonight we're going to be walking you through this sort of walkthrough from our perspective as community providers, as members of labor, on what's really happening in this moment. And so as we go through this, if you are feeling a little confused or a little overwhelmed, but especially as if you do research later on and you still feel overwhelmed by this budget, I want to reaffirm you that that is exactly what's happening. It doesn't make sense to you because it doesn't make sense, right? Plain and simple, the first thing that you need to know about this budget process is that it does not make sense, and it's meant to confuse you and overwhelm you so that you give up. It's a very similar narrative with what's happening at a federal level with Trump making cuts through our complicated budget processes and throwing a lot of stuff at us all at once. It's meant to make us feel overwhelmed. It's meant to make us feel disempowered. Our local budget here in San Francisco is exactly the same way. It's designed to be very inaccessible. It's designed to keep it out of reach for the average person. But if you're here, you probably already have an inkling that it is super important. And that's absolutely right. Winning an election is one thing. If an elected official that you appreciate is brought into office, that's one step of the victory. Governance, however, is another thing entirely. And a lot of how government happens is through the budget. Resolutions, as you might have heard of them, are passed at the board. They're nice, they're great. If there's not funding attached, nothing happens. As we know, even in our own personal lives, if there's not money behind something, it's not going to work. So I want to reaffirm you're not alone. And by being here, you are now joining a decades-long tradition of advocates, workers, and San Francisco residents who get together to build a community understanding of the budget. We're not on the inside. We're not at the decision-making table. So we have to source our information from each other to help each other understand this and to flex our power, our people power, in order to get what our communities need. We are the people and we are really powerful, but this system is designed to keep us out, to keep us scared, and to keep us confused. But you're here because you are going to help join us in doing what we always do as San Francisco residents, as nonprofits, as city workers. We're going to do what we always do: stand up in the face of the world to defend San Francisco values. So thank you for joining us here today. And I want to start off with a pulse check. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can talk a little bit more openly and see each other. If you'd like to be on camera, that is, with a reminder that this recording will be shared out afterwards. So I want to see who here has participated in the budget process. So I'm going to have you raise your hands. And for all of you here, you are now participating, whether it's your first or your 20th. This counts. You're in the budget process now. So if everybody at the bottom of your screen click on react and raise your hand. I'll give everybody a few seconds to figure that out. Everybody raise your hand. I will raise mine as well. All right, folks. So you're raising your hand, and you're raising your hand because by being here, you are already more informed than the average San Francisco resident on the budget. You're in it. You're in your first budget process, and welcome. And this is a long, long tradition for some of us because believe me, it will really, really, really radicalize you. Now, what we're going to do is lower your hand if this is only your first budget process, and keep your hand raised or raise it again if this is your second budget process. Second or more. Second or more is what I'll say. Nice. We see a good mix in the room. Keep your hand raised or raise it again if you've been involved for 3 years. This is your third budget cycle. Absolutely. Is there anybody who this is your fourth budget cycle? Amazing. And is anybody at your fifth budget cycle or more? Wow. We have some experts in the room, and that is where I lower my hand. This is my fifth budget cycle. And then for the folks who remained, I would just want to give them a quick round of applause and to say thank you for the work and thank you for fighting. And then a quick round of applause for everybody who it's your first time being here. So everybody can lower their hands and say, thank you so much. Thank you for everybody who has been fighting, but also for a lot of us, it's not a choice on whether or not to be here. We were dragged here kicking and screaming by the urgency of the situation. That's exactly how it worked for me. I would rather not be here. We'd all rather not learn this information. We'd rather it be proactive and able to reach the community. But that's not really how it works here, as we know. So thank you folks for participating in the exercise. And I do envy those of you who it's your first time experiencing the budget because it really changes you. It really radicalizes you to hear how this budget system actually works. With that, we are going to go ahead and get into how the budget works. Takeaway number one. So you might have heard about our $16 billion budget. That is our local budget here in San Francisco. It's $16 billion. Now, that number is really big, really stunning. You'd be really surprised to hear that. But it's important to note, it's not the money that we control. We do not actually really control $16 billion. As you can see from this great visual from Mission Local, a lot of that money is in enterprise departments. Enterprise departments are the airport and the port mainly. So a lot of those billions is really just tied up in SFO. And it's great that we have oversight over those dollars, but they don't actually come back into the city itself. So it's worth noting, we're paring the budget down a lot. 6.8 is the real budget number. Your first takeaway on the basics of how the budget works, takeaway number one, the general fund is the only money we control. That's the only phrase that you need to know for this process, but let me tell you what the general fund is. The general fund are discretionary dollars. That means it's not anything that's tied up at the airport. It's not a mandated grant from the state or federal government. We can't really control those. The general fund is 100% under the purview of the mayor. So this means this is money that we have free reign to control. That number is 6.8 billion. Now, it's a good to note so that when you hear that 16 billion number, remember to check it in your head and remember that's not really the number that we control. And in your head, sort of pare it down and remember it's more like 7 billion. Now, you might notice about that 7 billion number, it's still huge. It's still $7 billion. So the number has dropped by about 10 billion, and it's still a huge, huge amount of money. So who controls this? So This is a lot to take in, but feel free to absorb. The people who control this include the 5-member budget committee of the Board of Supervisors. If you're not aware, here in San Francisco, we have a Board of Supervisors, acts as a city council. However, because we are both a county and a city, we have a Board of Supervisors instead of a city council. It is, however, pretty much the same thing as a city council. We have a budget committee, similar to Congress, similar to our state government. This budget committee is made up of certain supervisors, 5 of them to be exact. They have significant influence on what this budget is. Those 5 people, you might recognize them here, but in case you don't, Shaman Walton, Connie Chan, Raphael Mandelman, Matt Dorsey, and Joel Engardio. Those are our 5 supervisors. I like to always brief people on who this budget committee is because you might be curious why you're going to hear from some supervisors more about the budget than from others. Even though the budget is so all-encompassing and so important, every member of the Board of Supervisors wants a say on the budget, but these 5 people have even more say than that. However, I do have a really big caveat here, which is that Mayor Daniel Lurie is the primary decision maker on the budget. That he has more say than anyone else. It's sort of a joke quote here in the city that any random person in the mission has more power than a member of the Board of Supervisors over the budget. That is absolutely correct, to be honest. Our Board of Supervisors, I like to start off and let you mention them and reaffirm that our supervisors have power in here. They really do not have that much power, though. You might think of this checks and balances system that we have at a federal and a state level that helps keep the branches of government in check. We have done away with that in San Francisco. There is no real check on the mayor when it comes to this. It's very small. The board does still have power. We'll get into that a little bit later. But a key takeaway here is Mayor Daniel Lurie is the primary decision maker. He controls about 99% of this budget. So this is the most important thing to know. And this happens because we have a strong mayor system. So unlike some local governments, we do not have a city manager. A city manager would usually propose the budget from an admin perspective angle. They're a nonpartisan body who would control that. We do not have that here locally. Instead, that role is fulfilled by the mayor. So what makes us have what we call a strong mayor system is control of the budget. It's the thing that makes Mayor Daniel Lurie more powerful than all of the Board of Supervisors. There are some checks to this, but again, we're doing the basics and the takeaways here. Takeaway number 2, Mayor Daniel Lurie is the most powerful person in the budget process. If you wonder why advocacy efforts tend to target the mayor and talk a lot about the mayor, it feels like us as advocates are oftentimes coming in conflict to the mayor, no matter who it is, for decades and decades. Why are we all so mad at the mayor? It's a natural process of this budget that when one person controls the entire budget, there is nobody else to disagree with. If you disagree with any part of the budget, you are disagreeing with the way that the mayor is doing things. It could be me as the mayor. It could be our best friend as the mayor. We would still come into conflict with them because it's a lot of power to have. You absolutely must have plenty of criticism and feedback for this position. And why are we talking about it right now? So this is going to be our third and our final big takeaway on this Budget 101. Why now? Why are we talking about this right now? So as you can see here, this is the how it works graphic that the budget in the city gives us. So in December, the departments get instructions on how to make their budgets from the mayor. They submitted those proposed budgets back in March, and June 1st, which is today, but a few days earlier, so on May 30th this year, the mayor proposes the city budget. The board then approves that budget in July. This year, it's going to be a little bit earlier than July. June 25th is when the board is going to approve the budget. So if you're paying attention here, what we're really talking about is this little period between June and July. The mayor controls the budget the 11 months of the year. Besides that, for 1 month, less than 1 month, the board has control of the budget. They are able to make some changes. They are able to seize a little bit of power. And additionally, this is when hearings happen to explain what the budget is. There's public comment so that members of the public can come in, give their advice, give their feedback on the budget, because all of the other 11 months of the year, the budget is very much shrouded, very much in the back room. It's not something that we can really look at, which is why we're talking about it right now. So over the next 3 weeks, all of the big decisions on the budget are going to be made. The budget is very much in an unofficial draft phase as of the mayor's proposed budget. What happens next is the board takes a critical eye at it. We, as community members and as advocates, have our first chance to look at the budget and to suggest changes to the budget, all within a span of 3 weeks, which is why it gets so hectic this time of year. We don't know anything about the budget many times of the year until the mayor's budget comes out. We then have about a week to understand the budget, and then another couple of weeks to advocate for changes. It is such a rapid process, and it is so quick, and it is because it's designed to keep the public from power, from the real decision-making parts of this budget. It's always frustrating for us as advocates, but I want to give this point across here so that we know this is the point of time that we're chatting about. This is why it's so urgent and so hectic right now. And additionally, that's why it's so much more important for members of our community to even be aware of what's going on, to be showing up here in this space. You're already here during the most important time. This system has disempowered people for so many generations that it is already such an honor to be with you here and to be with all of you as we take back the public's role in this budget process. So with that, that is my budget 101 a little bit. Again, we'll do it like a longer Q&A. So I won't take any questions at this time, but write it down in the chat, write it down somewhere. I don't want you to lose your question because it is super important, but I do want to move us quickly into the next phase of what we're chatting about here. So with this, I'll have a quick little break for us to debrief, settle a little bit on what that is, and we'll return in just about 2 minutes. Again, write down any questions that you have. We'll be back in 2 minutes to talk about the next phase. I will also pause the recording. Recording. Wonderful. And I'm going to get us back into it for the next phase of the presentation. All right. Before we get into it, again, I want to go over the 3 main takeaways. Number 1, the budget is $16 billion, but really the money we control is the general fund, closer to $7 billion. Takeaway number 2, Mayor Daniel Lurie is the primary decision maker. Takeaway number 3, it's all happening right now. The month of June is the critical moment. Now what we're going to get into is the budget about this year. So this year, if you've already seen what's going on with the budget, if you've read it anywhere in any of the news, if you've even looked at the link to the mayor's budget book at this point, you are probably having a lot of questions. It's probably a little bit confusing. And on that front, it absolutely is extremely confusing and very vague, is the number one thing. The mayor's budget book is very, very vague, unfortunately. So when we talk about what the budget is, we talk about it with sort of our own angle. And I want to be really transparent about what that angle is and the way that we look at the budget, because it's very different from the way other groups look at the budget. So our angle comes from who we are. We are the People's Budget Coalition of San Francisco. So the People's Budget Coalition, we're an independent coalition of over 150 groups. We represent nonprofit, community, and labor unions. Our spin on this budget, you'll hear a lot of spin as people talk about the budget. Our angle, we want a just and an equitable budget. So that's our angle. When we're analyzing this, that's going to be our spin. We're not going to pull any punches about that. We are coming at this from justice and equity, and these kind of experiences fire us up. We're all here today because we know that business as usual does not work for many of our community members. This, for us, the budget process has never been a very basic or mundane routine for us. For us, it has always meant life and death. So this is the way that we approach this budget. And I'll make that spin just super clear to you because everyone else's spin will not be made clear to you. No one else is going to be honest about what their spin is, which is unfortunate. But moving into it, let's talk about the deficit. So the deficit, that means that the money that we have and that we are projected to have over the next couple of years is not going to be as much as our projected expenses. So what that is essentially if you were to make a budget for the next month, but you know, with your wages, knowing your rent, trying to estimate your grocery bill ahead of time, you balance all of that together. And if you find I'm going to have to ask my mom for $100 because I'm not going to be able to cover this. I'm going to have to take out a loan this month. I'm going to have to pay my credit card bill and just add a few things more. It means that you don't have enough money to pay for what you have to coming up ahead. What's different about this budget and how the city budget does it is we have to have a balanced budget. We cannot take out loans in order to cover our expenses. At the federal level, they can take out loans. That's why they have a deficit that can grow. Our deficit has to be zero at the end of each budget. Right now, it's projected to be 800 million. So that's 800 million that we need to cut because we can't take out loans to cover it. We can't create new revenue within the span of 2 years, although that's something we would very much like to consider as people's budget. Ultimately, the decision has been made that how we're going to close this is by cutting expenses. But as I mentioned again, budgets are moral documents. So we need to solve this deficit that's at about 800 million. And we need to do it in a way that reflects our values as San Franciscans. So I want to talk about the deficit for this year. So this is another big takeaway. Remember to have this. We are trying to solve an $800 million deficit. But what I've included up here at the top is a recent article from the San Francisco Chronicle. They talk about in this article how budget trutherism is on the rise in the Bay Area. What they're referring to is the fact that even though it should be non-political. It should just be able to be a statement of fact. $800 million. This is a deficit, and we must solve that. There is some dispute about this deficit, both from us and our labor partners. We agree that there is a financial crisis, and this is what the Chronicle is really trying to get at in this recent article. They are saying that there is contention with whether or not there is a deficit. So, to us as community members, I want to pose, when is a deficit not a deficit? When are situations such that the community doesn't view that as a deficit? Why are our perspectives different on this deficit than the local government? And with that, I want to talk about the usual suspects. I want to talk about big corporations in San Francisco. This is when a deficit is not a deficit. We understand, and I think the Chronicle is meant to poke a little bit of fun at the labor unions and as the common public as they try to understand this deficit and say, you just don't get it. There isn't the money. We have to make cuts. Us as people and as community members instinctively know that it's misleading to say that there is a deficit without saying why there is a deficit. There's a deficit, as us here in San Francisco know, because corporations and the wealthy do not pay their fair share. That is true federally, it's true at a state level, but I think people are a little unaware how true it is at a local level. Even here in San Francisco, despite our progressive values, despite all of these things that we want to commit to, we still are not making corporations pay their fair share. So I wanted to put that article from the Chronicle out there to show you how the ways in which we as the people view things differently than the establishment, view things a little bit differently than the press releases coming out of City Hall. Because when we see a budget deficit, we know that that's a deficit because corporations are not paying their taxes. With this is going to be, and I'll share a resource, a great resource that we have to explain this. I want to talk about why we're targeting Airbnb specifically. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen because this could be a lot to talk about. This deficit only exists because one, corporations haven't paid their fair share, and two, it's also caused because corporations do not want to pay their fair share right now. What Airbnb is doing is they are suing the city along with Uber and Lyft. They already paid some taxes. They want to have those taxes refunded because they say that they were misclassified. It's all very much in the weeds reasons why they're suing us. However, the interesting part here is those in the weeds questions were answered with Prop M. We got together as the city, as labor unions, and we created a measure that you might have seen on your ballot this past November, Prop M. It was super complicated and seemed common sense. And the whole goal of Prop M was to fix the questions that these corporations were raising with our business taxes. It even lowered their tax bill a little bit. But labor unions, community members, and everyone in the city said, that's fair. We have a confusing tax system. Let's go ahead, take the hit a little bit, simplify it. The understanding was that these big corporations, if we pass this measure, would drop their lawsuits because the question is solved. The issues that they want to resolve with the lawsuit is solved by Prop M. Drop your lawsuits. We can be on our merry way. That is not what happened. It comes to November. Measure M passes. No word on whether or not the lawsuits will be dropped. Us as community members start raising the alarm bell. Why are they not dropping their lawsuit? Come to find out that the city, in addition to accepting this lawsuit and embracing it and fighting it as if it's legitimate, the city is also keeping on reserve every dollar that Airbnb and Uber and Lyft want back. It amounts to $400 million. If you remember from earlier, our deficit, 800 million. So half of the deficit could be immediately erased by these companies dropping their lawsuit. That's what we're talking about as community members when we raise the question of, yes, there is a deficit, but we could solve this. We could solve this easily. Us as community members, as the nonprofit sector, as working people, we should not have to foot the bill for this. In general, we would believe that. But especially at this point, they are causing half of this deficit. We absolutely believe that they should be responsible. And it's sort of great as a community member to hear the Chronicle pushing back on this with their editorial board, because now I know, okay, we're making a difference and we're making people uncomfortable. That was a really great moment for me to hear, because budget trutherism is on the rise in the Bay Area. We are the people. We are the People's Budget Coalition. Budget advocacy has been around for decades, but let me tell you, it has never been this organized. So we're on the front lines of something here. And the reason why folks are starting to get a little bit uncomfortable is because this is the first time that community members have been able to look at the budget and look at it critically. I am the first person, as far as I'm aware, in San Francisco in the past 20 years to work on the budget full time on behalf of the community. And I am extremely, extremely grateful to have this, but I want to reflect that back as well to say, this is on the rise. And it's on the rise because these situations are upsetting. This is unbelievable that these corporations are causing this deficit and that us as community members have to foot the bill. That was my rant on that, and I appreciate everybody going with us. I will also be sharing a link in the chat a little bit later of a great video explainer of this lawsuit situation. So if that was confusing, that's how a lot of our budget fight works. Which leads me very nicely into talking about what the budget is. So I've mentioned that the budget itself is very vague, and that is absolutely correct. The budget has been out for 2 days, and transparently, this summary of it that I'm going to give you is incomplete. There's things missing from it. It's also very vague because the budget, when it releases, does not release a line item budget. It's not going to tell you how much we spend on food in the city. It's not going to tell you, I have provided services for San Francisco for domestic violence. Is my budget going to be okay? You're not going to find an answer in the document. You can't find almost any answers in the document. I'll leave a link to it still in the chat, but I don't necessarily encourage folks to look at it because it's going to confuse you. It's going to be so vague that I have been analyzing this budget for 2 days. I haven't even opened the budget book itself, which is meant to be the public-facing one, and only using the back documents of the book because it really is so meaningless. That's my caveat here too. I'm going to sum up a little bit of what's in this budget, what we know so far, but I'm also going to ground you in the fact that it is unbelievable that 2 days after a budget releases, we still don't know what's in it. This is something that's sort of become expected at this point. This is how the budget of San Francisco works. But every year, I never ever stop being angry at the fact that this is how this works. But it is. The budget is out. Us as community members, frankly, as budget experts, are completely in the dark, and that's on purpose. One more quick example is how important it is for us to understand the budget and really get into the weeds. Around this time last year, but a little bit later, we're about midway through June, When somebody gives me a call and says, I'm from AFT 2120. I work for City College. I was just perusing one of those back budget books, and I see that the City College reserve is half of the number that we expected. Is this an error? Is this a mistake? What is this? What's going on? So we raise the alarm bells. We talk to a bunch of the supervisors. We reach out to the mayor's office. It's not a mistake. They, without announcing, it's not in the budget book. It's not written out anywhere. It's not in any of the press releases. Nowhere else is it stated. But secretly and behind closed doors, the Free City College budget was cut in half. And it took a wise community member taking a look at these nightmare documents for hours to even find that that had happened. This is what I'm talking about. This is the stuff that they will try to hide from you until the very last minute. But with that, we'll get into the things that we do know and what we don't yet know about those things. Number one, we know that homelessness is going to be gutted in this budget. I'm not going to lie, this was a little bit of a surprise even for me. I thought with Daniel Lurie's what he has said on the campaign trail, I assumed that that means that he would put plenty of money into homeless services. However, that's not what's happening here. So what he wants to do is take Prop C, business taxes. You might have heard of it. If you ever hear about Prop C, the homeless tax, that's it. It's Prop C. It's from 2018. It's generally what folks refer to as Prop C or Our City, Our Home. It sets aside money for unique populations that were not yet served by homeless services. What Daniel Lurie wants to do this year, all of these categories that we have laid out on the other side here says 25% for mental health, 15% for prevention, 50% for families, youth, housing. All of these things were laid out by community members and by members of the general public. And he wants to upend that. So at this point, he wants to remove those categories so that he can spend it on other things. This does not mean that he's going to spend it on homelessness. However, this means he's going to take those dollars, apply them to general services that existed before 2018, before the additive tax came about. And he's going to do this so that he can free up money for other parts of the budget. And in this, we haven't yet been able to make his math make sense yet, but somewhere in here is about a $90 million cut to homeless services. We have no idea who's footing the bill for that yet, where it's going to come out of. I don't even know if they know yet, but we know this is the justification they're using. The second most important thing, layoffs in a big, big way. 1,400 jobs are going to be deleted from the budget book this year. This is 1,400 positions that are in active recruitment or that already have people in them. So there's going to be a couple hundred layoffs of city workers. It's worth noting as well that anytime there are grant reductions or service reductions, that also causes layoffs in the nonprofit sector. So whatever happens to city jobs, to nonprofit grants, this means layoffs. Layoffs is a big way that Daniel Lurie is choosing to balance this budget. The third big takeaway is that there are going to be cuts to vital services, and they are shrouded in mystery. We have been told, and it's been hinted at, that three big things on the line will be food security, workforce development, and the Dream Keepers Initiative, which is meant to specifically uplift the Black community. Those three grant areas have been hinted at that they are going to get huge cuts. I have no more details to share with you at this point. Neither do any of the providers. For context, the fiscal year starts July 1. Coming July 1, services could stop doing services. And so in food security, in the Dream Keepers initiative, and in workforce development, they could stop running their program, close their doors as soon as July 1st, and they still have not been notified of this. And we won't be notified for another couple of weeks. This is the frustrating system that we're in. But before we go into a more involved Q&A and get into our conversation, I want to leave you with a little bit more hope about what's going on, which is that this is a frustrating and disgusting process. It's extremely frustrating to all of us, but we are not alone. You are not alone either. Thousands of people are going to lose their jobs this year. This is a really historic year, and things are going to change a lot. And you're not alone, and I'm not alone, and we have the power of this situation because transparently, if there's anything that we know about this mayor, is that he cares what the people are saying, but only when they say it really loud and all together. That's how we show our power as community members. And with that, on Wednesday, we're going to have a huge rally at City Hall. We're expecting several hundred people to be there. At least 700 folks will be there from labor, from People's Budget, from community members, from folks all around to stand up and to say, don't balance this budget on our backs. Corporations need to pay their fair share. So we encourage all of you to join us Wednesday, June 4th, this upcoming Wednesday at 12 p.m. at City Hall. But I want to point out again, just another little quirk of this budget system is that all of these hearings, all of the opportunities for public comment take place during the 9 to 5 work week. So it's understandable, that is to say, if you cannot show up to this event, if you have a job that does not allow you to leave, that's understandable. And we do really appreciate those of you who can come out during your lunch break. If you can make it, we would absolutely love to see you there. If you can't, however, we really invite you to fill out this link and stay in touch with us. We have letter writing campaigns that are going to go live tomorrow, where you can write a letter to your supervisor. You can make calls to your supervisor, letting them know what you want different about this budget. So more information is coming and more is here, but we wanted to give you this opportunity to let you know what's going on in this budget and what we're planning to do about it. If you'd like to join in on these plans, fill out this link. I'll also drop it in the chat. And I want to share with you a little exciting detail about what else we have planned and the 2 dates to know. June 4th is the first date to know, coming up this Wednesday. The next one is June 23rd. This is traditionally known as Public Comment Day. On this day, people line up for hours in order to give a 2-minute testimony on what they think the budget should include or not include. It's a very disempowering day. If you've ever been, we are so grateful and thankful that you took your time out of your day to come there and share your story. But we know it's extremely disempowering to stand in that long line for 2 minutes while the supervisors who are there are probably not going to make eye contact with you. It's very frustrating, but to let you know, I'll keep it this broad to say we have other plans for June 23rd for this year. It's going to be a little bit more exciting than a typical public comment day. And what's especially exciting about this is that community members are coming up to me with ideas for what we should do on that day all the time. And so this community energy is very much alive. And we'll see at that point what we are doing on June 23rd, but save the date at the very least. You'll be able to watch the news about it the next day. And with that, I'm going to move into our question and answer phase. And I'm going to stop the recording here.